representation and misrepresentation in journalism. We both Professor Stevenson and I decided we'll arrive at that area of me addressing it, because I have noticed that in the last 3 to 5 years, we have all become victims of false representations in the media, of realities that are happening or not happening anywhere. And most of them are very hurtful, politically, ideologically, socially, and deeply in an individual way. People have been killed because of fake news on WhatsApp, right? We are all aware of how suspicions and misidentity can be paid with a human price of a life that can be taken by mobs, right? Lynching and killing innocent people, all because they saw a story on WhatsApp saying some kidnappers taking children from villages have come to take them away, and next thing you know, you have an innocent, you're on a bike and you stop to ask directions where to go. Next thing you know, the mob is attacking you. I mean, what a cruel death. You come as an innocent person and you have no hope of giving your innocence, for them to see. You can't even talk. They start hitting, and next thing you know, people are stoning you, and you're on the floor, and they're kicking and killing and stepping on you until you die. All because some WhatsApp story said that some kidnapper is going to be in this village. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, and such a callous disregard for human life is utterly shocking. United States, I mean, there was media, there was newspapers everywhere talking about the tragedy of WhatsApp in India. Yes, we all read fake news, but we all can identify that as a game, almost like a kale. You just say, oh, that's false. It can't be. We don't have that critical attitude to discern what is true and what is false, and how can non-English speaking rural India take that cue and identify what is false and what is not. And who is the mediator in between? The media is supposed to be the journalists, the media, the press are the mediators of reality, right? And we are failing. I think that there's a journalistic failure in India that fails to educate its readers, its audiences. I'm talking about both television, radio, newspapers, new media, online media, have not been critical enough of ourselves. Journalists don't criticize journalists. And so the issue here is that what happens when journalism goes out of control from trained journalists to anybody can be a journalist, right? All I have to have is this. I can create a story right now on my WhatsApp or Facebook. I send it in, and it's utterly false. But next thing you know, you have 500,000 hits, multiplied, forward it, send it out again and again and again. Next thing you know, 3-4 million people would be reading my utterly false story that I created just for fun, but it ends up in the loss of a human life on the other end. That is the real tragedy of human inventions in new tools of journalism these days, is that even as we advance technologically, we have not advanced in a critical aptitude and attitude how to read news, how to watch news, and how to engage ourselves in the true nature of the flow of messages, the flow of ideas, and flow of information in a society. And if we are not critically aware, like journalism students here, and journalists who are practicing as journalists here, if we don't critically engage our audiences and teach them how to spot misinformation or misrepresentation from representation, we're failing as a democracy. All democratic open societies have to confront this. Now, this is expected in closed societies, communist societies, socialist societies, but not in a open, free, democratic societies like India and the United States. Now, the US is not an exception. US is also a victim to this because citizens of United States are not critical enough to analyze and discern what is true and what is not. At the height of elections in the United States, when Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were running against each other, a student came to me and showed me on her WhatsApp. She said, "Dr. Babbili, can you believe Hillary Clinton has child prostitution in her house?" And I said, "What?" She goes, "Here's the story. Hillary Clinton actually has 25 little children in her house, and she's selling them very secretly." I said, "Look at the source. Where is this story coming from?" So I took that story, put it on the screen, and then I said, "Let's all analyze this story." Okay? How many of you believe this is true? Half of the class raised it. Because they liked Trump, not Clinton, right? So it was very obvious. So you tend to believe what you agree with, rather than to question the truthfulness of that story. So we analyzed it. There was no source in that story, according to so-and-so and label, a storyline. It was just an opinion of somebody. And I said, how can that be a journalism story? Because you don't have a source attributed to this? So they might say, okay, according to police department of some Arkansas town, Hillary Clinton was found to be engaged in child prostitution. Okay, so there was one source mentioned. Well, I tell my students, I said, always check with 2 other sources. Go to other online sources, go to other newspaper websites, and see if this story is in there. Okay? If it is carried somewhere else, there's some credibility there. But you also should look at where is the source. How many sources are saying this? So if it's a true story, you'll have at least 3 sources in there. Right? So I tell them you need to have at least 3 sources to attribute whether it's a clear representation of truth or is it a misrepresentation. And that is happening in every society. And especially it happens when political campaigns are underway, because each candidate, not only wants to tell the truth about their own candidacies, but they want to misrepresent their opponent. I want to say bad things about my opponent, not good things. So, and those are carried out as truth to other parts of the society, and that will start inflicting great harm to an open and democratic society. So there's this problem of misrepresentation, but then also underneath that there's another factor that it not only is misrepresented, there's a lack of representation. Okay, whereas there are certain communities and certain topics in society that are virtually invisible to the rest of the society. How many of you read a story on Dalits? Just a Dalit-centered story. We don't cover communities that are substantially in in Indian mainstream. And said, how many of you read or watched a story on the Lambada community? Maybe 1 or 2 per year, maybe. I walk through a Lambada community every time I go to my SR Nagar house. Okay, there's a Lambada community there, and I know the people who I grew up with. So I say, "Hey, kaise bhai, sab bigha," and all that stuff. I want to see them covered in the press. I want to see their struggles, their cultural narratives. in the mainstream. So there are lots of time we do not have coverage of the Hijada community, for example. LGBT and lesbian, gay, and transsexual communities. We have no knowledge of the way they live, what they do, what kind of family life they have, what are their struggles in day-to-day life. We are actually ignorant of our own communities, our own societies we live in them. And urban societies have a bias against the rural communities. Arey wo gaon ka hai bhai, kya gaon khede, as if from a village means you have a less value. See how judgmental we become as we get more educated. We think that the literate world has higher value than illiterate world.
Sir, of late, national media has been beaming fake news with immunity.
Yes.
Recently it happened on some channel ad. So our journalism bodies are not doing anything. Why?
That is a very, very important facet of journalism. It shows that journalism is not well prepared and they lack ethics. Asunti journalism should not be tolerated, and I think the entire journalism enterprise has to protest and make sure that those things are not rewarded in any way, and kind of politically and financially they are being rewarded for fake news. So we need to make sure that is highlighted and citizens become more sensitive and more critical and actually protest about media organizations' behavior like that.
Should our parent bodies do something or not?
Yes, our parent body definitely should be doing that. They have to take into account, and that's why self-regulation is very important.
So, do we have certain framework of regulations, and does it come under that ambit or not?
Yes, it does. It does. Yeah, we do have several organizations, in I think coming out of Delhi, and so we the Press Guild of India and the other organizations that I used to actually be very familiar with. It's their role to influence self-regulation.
Okay. And you were talking about tampon advertisements on American television. It happens in India also with respect to condom ads.
I see.
Right? That should be beamed past 10 night.
Yes.
Right? They are beamed midday. When all sorts of people, all ages and sex, right? They are watching the TV. They are doing the thing. So why is it happening and how it can be stopped?
I think culturally offensive advertisements should not be tolerated, but who will influence or who will regulate, that's a big question. But Advertising Council of India, if there is a advertising regulatory body, it should advocate, it should actively protest and make sure that they're educating the advertising agencies against that positioning as such. Culturally insensitive ads are not appropriate even in a free society.
One last question, sir. Are our parent bodies not regularly watching these things? Should someone complain and they will respond, or they should have certain mechanism and infrastructure so that they watch on a daily basis and control without outsiders pointing fingers?
Yeah. I think it is the responsibility of both the citizens, that is the consumers of the media, and of the regulatory organizations. Both of them have to be sensitive to culturally, very insensitive advertisements.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
A story of fading sweet memories. The designer shop inside Divanduri, Patragati, Hyderabad.
Kakaji Wedding Mall Women's Exclusive. Bridal Khada Dupatta. Designer tail cuts. Gowns. Complete ethnic wear. Kakaji Wedding Mall Women's Exclusive, Moti Gali, Chowmuhalla Palace Road, Hyderabad.